What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is the Only Sports Podcast. That's right, the Only Sports Podcast. I'm Will. Usually Casino is on that side of the screen, but he is indisposed at the moment. So we'll see him on Thursday's show, but I am here on the Only Sports Podcast. Will is with you. So we are going today to talk about, a lot of stuff. I have about 6 pages of notes here. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot, but hopefully we can breeze through it. We're going to talk about the Olympics, specifically the Olympics ending, and then the men and women's basketball gold medal games. I don't really care about the Olympics. I think I've made that note on here. So, I watch some of it when it's on. Most of it, uh, I don't know. I don't really care. So yeah, basketball is the one thing I care about in the Olympics. So we're going to talk about that and a crazy men's and women's finals. But after that, we'll get into some recent NFL news. Then we'll go into our AFC South preview for the upcoming season. If you want to listen to the whole episodes are uploaded here and wherever you get your podcast. Also throughout the week, I will be putting all segments we do into clips on the YouTube channel as well. So if you just care about specific segments of the show, you can go watch those instead of having to go through the entire episode. So without further ado, let's jump into the Olympics. Right there, it says the Olympics are over. I should have put something for the men's and women's on our little banners here, but I didn't because I got so many banners for other stuff. So bear with me, folks. The men's final in the Olympic gold medal match against France ended 98-87. Steph Curry, the hero of the game, had 24 points, 5 assists. He was 8 for 12 from 3-point line, which interesting stat, 8 of 12 from the 3-point line. That's a 66.70% completion percentage, right, of shots. He was 8 for 13 from 2-point range, which is a 61.50% shooting percentage. So he was actually better from the 3-point line than he was from the 2-point line, making, shooting one more from the 2-point range. And yeah, just unbelievable. He has that one shot. If anybody follows me on Twitter, you can see my handles right there. I reposted it, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen, just the shot over Wemby. That just looks like a just straight up shot that arcs and goes in. Unbelievable. LeBron James had 14 points, 10 assists with 6 rebounds. Kevin Durant had 15 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. Devin Booker, 15 points, 3 assists, 6 rebounds. And then obviously the kind of talk of this team has been I just put it right here, stock down. Embiid in this game, 4 points in 11 minutes, and Jason Tatum, 2 points in 11 minutes. So the talk of this team has basically been all about Embiid and Tatum and how Embiid, first off, it's weird. They're playing in France, but he is with Team America, not the movie, not the South Park movie, but he decided to play for Team America. I believe he is from France. I should have double checked that, but I don't care, to be honest. But basically, he was not born in America. So there's some weird kind of nationalism going on right here, which is also one of the reasons why I hate the Olympics. I just hate how it's like so rah your country. It just kind of feels antithetical to what, I don't know, everybody has issues with their country except for the Olympics. And then instead of rooting for specific athletes, you're just like, America, England, my home country. I love them. And it just, I don't know. That's why it's always just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. Again, nothing against the athletes themselves, but then it just always comes down to America versus France versus China. And it just rubs me the wrong way. But again, that has more to do with politics than it does the sports of it. But then again, on the other side, we had France. We had basically Victor Wembanyama carrying the French team with 26.7 rebounds, 2 assists, and then a guy whose name I am going to butcher, Gershon Yabusel. He plays for Real Madrid of the Spanish Liga, ACB, and the EuroLeague. He was in the NBA a couple years ago, averaged 2 points. So in this game, he had 2 rebounds and then 20 points. So both them single-handedly almost beat the United States. Well, I don't want to say almost because the final score was 98-87. They at least gave him a fight. They at least made it a lot closer than it probably should be when you have Team America filled with just the best all-stars in the NBA, even the ones not from the USA, like Embiid. But the talk coming out of this game was, first off, how great Curry was. I mean, 8 for 12 from 3-point line. And I mean, some of those shots, again, just vintage Curry from what we've seen in his NBA career. Double team doesn't matter. Guys have perfect defense on him, doesn't matter. Wembanyama, a whole 1.5 feet taller than him, it looks like. Just a hand in his face, doesn't matter, shoots it straight up, makes it. This has been, Steph Curry has always been my argument against this is going to take a weird turn, but in the whole LeBron, Michael Jordan, best player ever, like discussion, because you have Michael Jordan and you can say nobody in Michael Jordan's era changed the game of basketball more than Michael Jordan, right? I mean, I'm not even from a basketball standpoint, but even you think of marketing with the Jordans and all that kind of stuff, right? Then you look at current day NBA and what LeBron James' era of basketball has been. Nobody has changed the game more in this era of basketball than Steph Curry, right? Now, every team, you can make an NBA team if you're just good at 3-point shooting. You don't have to be good at anything else. Teams are shooting 30, 43s a game, and we see, I mean, I think the quality of the games have gone down because now the game is just try to get a good look on three, and then everything else kind of doesn't matter. All you have to do is rebound and then shoot it out to the edge to try to get an open three, right? That's why every game it feels like is either a blowout or a close game because somebody's making all the threes or both teams are missing it and it's close, right? I feel like, and that's obviously a very dumbed down version of what the NBA has become, but you get what I'm saying. So then you look at Steph Curry in this LeBron era, right? Where LeBron, most points ever scored, undisputed, I still would say undisputed second best player of all time. But in his era, you kind of have to look at Steph Curry just as the one who most of the iconic moments, the dynasty stayed with one team, iconic moments, it all just changed the game of basketball. It all kind of just muddies the water for me in the LeBron Michael Jordan debate. Because yes, during Michael Jordan's era, there were great players, but I don't think it's ever talked about or disputed that Michael Jordan was the best player in his era and did the most to elevate the game of basketball, right? I think in the LeBron era, when it's all said and done, let's say, I mean, both of them are, leading, and this is nothing against LeBron James in this Olympics because he was by far the best player. But again, when it matters most, the one that always steps up seems to be Curry, right? And he has the iconic moments, iconic shots. But when we talk about Curry and we talk about LeBron James, Curry, I feel like, gets the edge in almost everything that matters to people who watch basketball. Fun and exciting to watch. He stayed with his one team. I know most people don't care about that, but when you think of Michael Jordan, you just think of the Bulls, right? Now, obviously, he had the stint at the end with the Wizards, but that's kind of brushed under the rug because it was like a comeback. He had already won 6 titles, blah, blah, blah. With LeBron, you think of Cavs, but then he was also on the Heat. and the Lakers. And then there's rumors he could go somewhere else. I don't think he will, but again, there's rumors. So it's just one of those things where when I think you look back at this era of basketball, you're going to focus on the 3-point shooting, who elevated the 3-point shooting, who made 3-point shooting the new, triangle offense, the new wrinkle in this game of basketball that was like, now every team does this, right? Because this team over here had success with it. Now we all do it over here. It wasn't a team. It was one guy. It was Steph Curry. And then obviously he had, the Splash Brothers with Klay Thompson and all that kind of stuff. But Klay Thompson, again, got hot, fell off. Now it's just Curry. It's always been Curry. Curry has always been this player, and everybody loves watching a player who's great at what he does. What Steph Curry does great is shoot the three. So everybody loves watching a great Curry game, right? Unless you hate the Golden State Warriors. And again, I hate dynasties in sports, so I'm not even saying like you shouldn't, because obviously it's your team. It doesn't matter really what the player is. Even if he's great, if it's against your team, you're going to hate the great player, even though you have to respect him. Right. So I just thought a nice little moment there that kind of made me thinking, like, obviously LeBron's number 2. I'm not saying that. But I think when you make the case for number 1, you obviously have to go outside the realm of the obvious, right? Who has more titles? LeBron has more points. LeBron played longer, like all those kind of things. When you go on the edges of it, it kind of, I think Steph Curry is muddying and has been muddying that water for the case against LeBron when it comes to Jordan. And again, this is a stupid hot take, first take. If I had Stephen A on here, he'd be yelling at me. Or no, it'd be Nick Wright, right? He's the big LeBron guy. So I'm sure the LeBron fanatics will tear me apart, but it was just a little interesting thing. I was just thinking of, after Curry just put on the clinic, and then LeBron was still, again, great during the Olympics, but then overshadowed in the most important game by Curry. Just a weird little thing. And then on the other side, let's talk about the women's side. They win a nail biter, 67-66 against France. Who knew France was so good at basketball? But this is the 8th consecutive gold medal in the Olympics for the women's basketball team. They were led by Asia Wilson of Vegas's team, 21 points, 13 rebounds. Kelsey Plum also had 12 points, 4 assists, and then Copper, 12 points, 5 assists. France on the other side, Williams almost again pulled a Wemby and led France almost single-handedly to victory over the women's. 19.7 rebounds, 2 assists. So both men's and women's in the U.S. bringing home the gold medals. You love to see it. Again, the most interesting thing coming out of that for me was the Curry James dynamic. And then Embiid had a real rough time in the Olympics. And Tatum, I would say, had a rough time, but I think it was more just rough to his ego and to everybody's perception of him as one of the best players in the NBA, right? There was question marks about it, especially because Brown, his own teammate, outplayed him in the NBA finals and pretty much the playoffs, right? He was kind of the go-to guy. So I think Embiid, and again, as a Sixers fan, I think the cope for me would be, oh, well, he just always has to be the leader. He has to be leading the team. He has to be the best player, and then he kind of shines, right? If he's the 5th or 6th best option, maybe he kind of shrinks because he doesn't have to put it all on his shoulders and carry his team. That's my whole thing. And Tatum, I think it just really comes down to he's a great player on a great team instead of a transcendent player on a great team, right? Transcendent being LeBron, being Durant, being Steph Curry, where they just, no matter what's around them, they're going to be great. I feel like Tatum kind of has to be surrounded by greatness to be great. And then when he's surrounded by too much greatness, he kind of doesn't get on the court because he doesn't elevate the other guys, right? And he doesn't elevate above them. He kind of just exists. And again, no shot against Tatum. I think Tatum's a great player, and obviously he has a ring. He just won a ring, and they're probably going to be the number one team next year, right? Going into that season, everybody's going to be picking them to repeat. So we'll see. But yeah, just some interesting things there. As I said, the Olympics are over. So didn't I watched the I watched the opening ceremony, I watched the closing ceremony. Me and Casino talked about it, random sports in between. Closing ceremony was cool. Whenever you get Tom Cruise thrown off something or jumping off something, I like it. I like Tom Cruise despite all the weird Scientology stuff. I like him just as a movie star, like Daredevil guy. I like all the Mission Impossible movies. I love Top Gun Maverick. So he wants to keep doing this. Maybe there is something to Scientology. I don't know. Guy looks like he barely ages, makes really good movies. I don't know. Is he a weirdo? Yeah, obviously. I don't even want to say probably. Like, yeah, he's a weirdo. Have you ever seen an interview with him? But he's a weirdo who makes good things. And I don't know if he's done anything illegal, right? So where you don't have to separate the art from the artist. He just seems like a fucking weirdo. If he has done anything illegal, it's passed me by. I don't know. So I'm going to praise him as a movie star Daredevil, not as a person, I guess. But let's jump out of the way of whatever the hell I'm talking about and dive into NFL news. So the NFL news of the week, and I'm recording this about 1:30 on a Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. The news of the day right now is that Ayuk from the 49ers to Steelers is all but confirmed, or looks to be all but confirmed. It looks, again, we've been saying this since Thursday, and we were hoping for some more clarity on Thursday, but that did not happen. It looks like just some I's need to be dotted, some T's need to be crossed, and then he is going to the Steelers. It appears there's rumors that they were trying to get Fitzpatrick, the safety for the Steelers. There's rumors that there might be more players, more draft picks. Again, this is all rumor and speculation. The speculation coming out of the 49ers side by beat reporters and stuff like that was they don't want draft picks. They want a player. They want somebody they can plug in now, because obviously the 49ers window for a Super Bowl is before Purdy gets paid. And Purdy's going to get paid most likely this offseason. So they have this year, maybe next, to get back to a Super Bowl and actually win one. But as far as what they want players that can win now, not future draft picks, right? Because they're one of the older teams in the league. They have a quarterback on a rookie contract, and not even a rookie contract, a 7th round rookie contract. So they're not paying Purdy anything. Their core is getting older. Last year was one of the few years that their injury-plagued stars, with McCaffrey, with Kittle, with Deebo Samuel, for the most healthy, right? And we saw how good the 49ers can be when their key pieces are healthy. But again, that doesn't usually happen. Usually their key pieces, at least one of them, maybe two, worst case scenario 3, gets injured all around the same time. And then we've seen these 49ers seasons kind of fall apart when they don't have all their pieces. So all their pieces are getting older. They avoided injury last year. They made it to the Super Bowl. This year, can they do the same thing and actually win the Super Bowl? That's what we're waiting to see, right? NFL season starts in 3 weeks, I believe. So happy to have it. I do think Ayuk does not start for the 49ers. I don't know if he goes to the Steelers, but I think by week 1, he won't be on the 49ers. There's too much, where there's smoke, there's fire, and you can see the fire in the distance, right? 49ers have had a chance. They've had years, basically, to re-sign Ayuk. Doesn't look like they're going to. And then they have Samuel. They have other young guys stepping up, or they're hoping to step up. They drafted a wide receiver in this draft. So, yeah, I think it's all but confirmed that Ayuk leaves. Will he go to the Steelers? Will he not? That's a wait and see kind of thing. Next up, let's talk about J.J. McCarthy. He has a knee injury that he suffered in the preseason game the Vikings just had. No, I have not watched any of the preseason games. I've just seen highlights because I am one of those people that thinks preseason is useless to evaluate players, to see players, because again, it just feels like a completely different game week one versus first game of preseason, right? I mean, some of these preseason games, after the first half of the first quarter, I feel like they're completely unwatchable because again, it's third, fourth string guys who probably aren't even going to make the team by the time the season starts. So I just think it's bad football that I'm not really interested in. And then you see rookies like we did JJ McCarthy have like one drive, and then everybody tries to evaluate what career they'll have based on 5 snaps in a preseason. It's weird. I don't like it. It just feels like nonsense for talk shows where they're like, oh my God, did you see Caleb Williams? He made one really good throw. And you're like, okay. And he was the first overall pick of the first round of the NFL draft. I hope he makes at least one good throw. But again, I digress. So JJ McCarthy, he got a knee injury in this game. He apparently will be out, but we don't know for how long. It's not season ending. We'll talk about a guy who sadly is out for the season during a preseason game, but this is not season ending. It's one of those injuries where he could be out for a month, could be out for 6 months, could be out for 9 months. Who knows? I mean, obviously your knee is important to anybody because we move with our legs. So if you take one thing away from this podcast, let it be that humans move with their legs and their knee is in their leg. So that's all I have to say about that, right? That's all I can say. Sucks. I always hate when guys are injured, especially rookies, right? Like last year with Anthony Richardson, which we'll get to the Colts in a moment, but it's just rough when rookie comes in and again, first game gets injured. Who knows how long he's out for? Another sad story, Jahmyr Gibbs out for the season. I believe he also suffered a leg injury, obviously much more severe than JJ McCarthy because Jahmyr Gibbs out for the season. Blow to the Lions. And honestly, this is one of those things that's scary when you have a team built and ready and projected to go to the Super Bowl. So you're not trying to play your starters. You're playing the bare minimum. Again, I don't know why Jahmyr Gibbs was out there, but if he wouldn't have been injured, if he wouldn't have got injured, nobody would say anything. I believe he was even injured in practice. So this is just one of those things that happens. Got to feel bad for the Lions. The lovable, I don't want to say losers, but they are, right? The lovable losers of the NFL, finally a perennial contender to not even just go to the playoffs, to go to the Super Bowl. They were so close last year, and then something like this happens. It's rough, but again, I still think the Lions sneak out in the NFC. And again, with how the NFL is right now, you can get a random running back off free agency. And if you have a good offensive line, which I know the Lions do, they might be able to rush for 1,000 yards. No slight to Jahmyr Gibbs because I think he is a very good running back and would have helped them, but who knows? Well, not who knows. He obviously would have, but him being out for the season is a blow to this team. But I do think running back is one of those positions where you can kind of plug and play a bunch of different guys to make up for the one all-star. So let's move on to Hassan Riddick and all the Jets drama. Basically, the drama at this point is Hassan Reddick from the Eagles traded to the Jets. Before he was traded, he basically had conversations with the Jets that he wanted a new contract. Before he got traded, Jets were like, nah, we'll work one out when you get here. And he was basically like, I don't want to go to the Jets then. And the Jets still traded for him. That's the scuttlebutt. Is that really how it happened? Probably not, but that's what's being reported, right? That the Jets had no contract for him before he traded. When he got traded, he was like, guys, I would like a new contract. And they were like, we'll get to it. And now here we are without a contract. So Hassan Riddick, I feel like rightfully feels slighted by the Jets organization. So he has come out and basically said, I want to be traded. right? You guys basically lied to my face or didn't give me what you promised or said you would. So I'm here. I don't want to play. I'm in Tokyo in a kimono in the streets playing samurai, which looked cool. I don't know. Also, it's not like he owes anything to the Jets. They traded for him and then haven't given him money. So it's not like, it's a franchise that he owes them anything. They haven't given him anything in return. So as an Eagles fan, this upsets me because I really liked Hassan Reddick when he was at the Eagles. He was a big part and a big reason why that one team got to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So I think it was last year. God, it feels like a millennium ago. But I say millennium. It feels like a millennium ago. But as far as this story goes, the Jets GM basically came out with a statement and was like, we're not trading him. So this feels like an Ayuk thing where it's like kind of a stalemate on every side. And then it's just like, I don't see Ayuk playing with the 49ers. I don't see Reddick not playing for the Jets. I don't see what he could possibly be traded for. The Jets just traded to acquire him, and now they're just, unless they get back exactly what they just trade him back to the Eagles. I would love that. I loved his son Reddick. So yeah, this is a weird story. I do think Ayuk doesn't play another snap for the 49ers. I feel like Reddick has to play his next snap for the Jets. It would just be an unprecedented, weird move. We've only seen this kind of with coaches, right? With Belichick, where he signed, ironically, with the Jets and then was like, nah, JK, I'm out. And then he just went to the Patriots and the rest is history. So I don't know. Maybe the Patriots casinos teams swoop in and just go, we'll take him. Second round pick, whatever you traded for him, fifth round pick, here you go. And then they sign him. Who knows? I just think he has to play for the Jets. It just would be weird, but weird stuff has happened before in the NFL. So what do I know? Speaking of the NFL, great segue there. Let's move over to the NFC South. That is the conference we are previewing today, or division, I should say, we are previewing today. And without further, again, ado, let's jump into the team that the Lions 2 years ago had all the predictions, right? Where they were like, they ended the season really strong last year. Maybe they're in the Super Bowl next year. I feel like that team this year is the Houston Texans. How far can they go is the question. But in order to predict how far they can go, we have to go into the past and see how far they went last year. So last year, the Texans finished 10-7. They got a wild card win over the Browns in the playoffs, 45-14, with Stroud throwing 3 TDs in that game. And then in the next divisional round, they get blown out themselves by the Ravens, 34-10. CJ Stroud having 19 of 33, 175 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers in that game. Just kind of got the doors blown off them. Last year, their defense was 14th in the total defense, 23rd against the pass, 6th against the run. Their offense, 12th in total offense, 7th passing, 22nd in rushing. Coming into now this season, they have the 22nd ranked O-line, which I've been with all these teams now. I'm going to start including the O-line rankings because I think that is a big piece to when teams are good and when teams are bad, especially when they have elite quarterbacks. Is just those elite quarterbacks, the elite running backs having time, right? Or having space to run through giant holes that open. I think you can look back at teams that have won Super Bowls or lost Super Bowls solely based on O-line play. So that's why I'm including them in this. So in their offseason, they brought over Danielle Hunter from the Vikings, who had 16 sacks last year. Coincidentally, they also have Will Anderson last year, who was the defensive rookie of the year on the offensive line, or I'm sorry, defensive line. And last year, they actually set a franchise record when it came to sacks with 46. So obviously adding Danielle Hunter from the Vikings as a pass rusher this offseason to pair with Will Anderson, I really do feel like is going to bolster this defensive line. They also went I mean, if you just look, and this is what I did, I looked at who they brought over in the offseason, and it's clear that they are trying to replicate the success that D'Amico Ryans had in the 49ers, the success that the Eagles have had over the past couple of years for both those teams, just by having depth at the D line. So they brought over Danielle Hunter, obviously drafted Will Anderson last year, and then they brought over Edwards Jr., Barnett, and Autry on the D line, and then Akuda, Henderson, Bryant, Johnson Jr., and King, all D backs from free agency, various teams, obviously. And then not only that, drafted with their second round pick, because they obviously didn't have a first round pick, drafted in the second round, Kamari. I am not even going to attempt that last name. L from Georgia, the cornerback. And then also in the second round, brought over an offensive tackle from Notre Dame. So they shored up their offensive line in the draft and then, well, attempted to, right, with the second round pick. And then in the offseason, they went all defense. So now last year, as I just said, they were 14th in the league in total defense, but trying to shore up that defense by bringing in nothing but D line and defensive backs. And then we talk about their coaching staff. Every single one of them is returning from what they did last year, which is what you love to see. What we saw happen with the Lions, right? Where everybody was like, we got something good here. We're not going anywhere. So they have D'Amico Ryans as their head coach, Matt Burke as their defensive coordinator, and Bobby Slowick as their offensive coordinator, all coming back for a second year. So when we look at, now that we got the run sheet of what the Houston Texans did this offseason, I do think they finished what? They finished last season. I just put my notes down and now I need them again. They finished last season 10-7, right? They're over and under. Again, it's paper crazy over here. They're over and under. Oh, I don't even have it. Egg on my face. But Casino and I both picked their over for their over and under as I pull up what they're supposed to be this season, this upcoming season, I should say. And I just think, again, when you compare them to what the Lions did the previous year, this is everybody's hot pick for this year, right? And you know what? It should be. They brought back their entire coaching staff. They made just giant improvements, I would say, on a defense last year that was decent, right? 14th in total defense, so middle of the pack last year. Their over under is set at 9.5, so they're 10. Casino and I both said over because with every addition this team has made, with bringing in everybody that they have in the offseason, even if it's just for depth, right? I mean, you can look at Danielle Hunter as their big offseason signing, but I like the signing of Akuda, and I like how they just went all D line, all D backs, and then added just kept the units together that made this a 10-17 last year, right? We saw, I think what most people thought, including myself, was just a shocking display by CJ Stroud, right? I thought he was going to be better than the Panthers quarterback than Bryce Young, but I didn't think he would be this good, especially that fast. I would have picked him just based on size alone because I didn't like it. But then you also look at who they brought in, which I left off this list because I wanted to talk about him individually. But you look at last year, 22nd in rushing. So who do they bring over? Joe Mixon, basically the vocal point of the Bengals rushing attack for the past 5-6 years, however long he was with the Bengals. But so you shore that up, and then you bring in Stephon Diggs, again, big name, a vocal point of an offense that you've already seen. So you saw Joe Mixon, a vocal point of the rushing attack in Cincinnati. Now you bring in Stephon Diggs, a vocal point of a very potent Bills passing attack when he was there. Stephon Diggs, again, Josh Allen was not who we see Josh Allen as before Stephon Diggs got there, right? And you can say they grew together or Allen grew because of Stephon Diggs, but You bring him in as a clear number one wide receiver when last year it felt like the the Texans last year had an elite quarterback, had trouble running the ball, and then had a bunch of second and third wide receivers kind of stepping up, right? So now this year, you bring in a clear number one running back, clear number one wide receiver, pair them with everything you had last year. Obviously, I really like the addition of Dalton Schultz last year that they got over from the Dallas Cowboys. So now you have CJ Stroud, you have Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, and then one of the best fullbacks right after Juszczyk from the 49ers. You have Andrew Beck, an offensive line that, again, has a bunch of first and second round picks on it. Kind of haven't performed up to those standards, but it's still, where did I have? Oh, yeah, 22nd in the league in offense or offensive line play, which is the thing I'm most concerned about, because if you can't protect Stroud, then maybe when you can't protect your quarterback, you see an Aaron Rodgers situation, you see an Anthony Richardson situation. Obviously, I hope that does not happen. The last thing I would want to see is CJ Stroud being hurt, right? Because he's one of the most exciting players in the league, and I want to see this Houston Texans team do well. But you look at all the pieces, and then their defense last year, a good defense. I don't want to say great, because again, they were middle of the road, but all they did was bolster that defense. All they did was add key pieces to their weaknesses in offense last year. How is this not an 11, 12, 13 win team? How is this not a team competing for the number one seed? Now, you always have to be scared of a sophomore slump with CJ Stroud, but again, we can't play the what if game with what if great player last year is not great this year, because there's no data to suggest he wouldn't be great this year. Right now, there's just the superstition of a sophomore slump and all that kind of stuff. We can debate that. We can play the what if game till the cows come home. So just looking at what they had and then looking at what they added to what they had, this is, again, the over-under is 9.5. How are you not, if you're a big betting person, how are you not smashing the over button? It feels like a lock for a team that especially is going to go over 9 wins, right? They need to win 10 wins, which they won last year, with arguably more question marks on a worse team than they have right now, right? Coaching staff, everybody stayed together. Everybody has another year under their belt, right? So we always see rookie quarterbacks struggle because the coach gets fired, and then it's a new offensive coordinator, and then it's a new system the next year. So 4 years into a rookie's career, they've played with 4 different strategies, schemes, playbooks, coaches. CJ Stroud is getting consistency, and much like everybody else on this offense, on this defense, consistency and improvements at key spots. Now, the Texans didn't go all out in free agency, but they got very specific pieces to help with what they're trying to do. They needed a number one wide receiver, Stephon Diggs. They needed an actual rushing attack. You got Joe Mixon. They needed their D-line to not only have depth, but to have one more piece that can get to the quarterback. Boom. Brought in a guy who had 16 sacks last season. So again, I love this Texans team. I think they are in contention to be the number one seed in the AFC, but we're just going to have to see if all these pieces not only click together like they did last year, but grow to the amazing season they had last year, right? I mean, a blowout win against the Browns, who had the number one defense most of the year last year, is incredible. So I am all in on the Houston Texans. Again, if you're a bettor, smash that over. But again, as we've learned from this podcast, never take gambling advice from me. So that is all I can say to you folks. Let's move on to the next team in the division that we are going to talk about, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the obligatory moment where I say both Casino and I had Trevor Lawrence as our MVPs before the start of last season, and then sadly the season actually happened, and our hopes of an MVP Trevor Lawrence and being smarter than everybody in the room were dashed pretty quickly because they went 9-8 last season, including a rough stretch in the last 5 games where they went 1-4. They missed the playoffs. Last year, they were 22nd ranked total defense, 26th against the pass, 9th against the run, but they were 13th in total offense, 9th in the league in passing, 24th in rushing. They're bringing back Doug Peterson as their head coach, bringing back Press Taylor as their offensive coordinator. However, they're bringing in a new defensive coordinator, Ryan Nielsen. He comes over from the Falcons last year as their defensive coordinator, where the Falcons were better. Again, we just said Jaguars were 22nd in the league. Falcons defense last year, 11th in total defense in the league, 8th against the pass, 20th against the rush. In the draft, they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, who in that first preseason game looked pretty good. Again, I don't put a lot of stock in preseason, but he looked good. What can I say? They also got a defensive tackle from LSU and then a quarterback, offensive tackle, defensive tackle in the 3rd and 4th round. Now, their big free agent acquisitions were Armstead, or is it Amstead? I'm pretty sure it's Armstead, from the 49ers coming over. He was the defensive tackle there for a number of years. They also got Gabe Davis. Speaking of Bills wide receivers, Bills lost both. They're 1-2, and both of them went to the AFC South. So there you go. Gabe Davis coming over from the Bills. They also got Duvernay coming over from the Vikings. They also picked up just a random assortment of players: a safety, a guard, a center, kicker, running back, defensive tackle. I didn't write all these names down. These were all just kind of depth moves. They also picked up Darby at cornerback, and then it's basically all I have in my notes for this Jaguars team. So again, I like the move from Brian Thomas. I like bringing him in as a wide receiver because obviously they lose Calvin Ridley within the division, which we'll talk about him in a minute, but they lose Calvin Ridley, immediately replace him with a wide receiver that so far in preseason, I mean, I know it's one game, but he looked real good in that first game. His highlights of that game were really good. He had a great catch. You bring in a defensive coordinator from the Falcons who were better defensively in every category than your defense was last season. So that feels like a no-brainer. So if you look at what this team can be, which is a middle of the road, 13th, 14th, 15th ranked offense. Again, no rushing attack. Excuse me. Nothing to really address the rushing game compared to last season. But again, most teams don't, right? I feel like now the league, especially with all the kind of running back slander over the past couple of years, just solely focuses on offense, even though you look at teams that make it into the playoffs and most of them are a top 5 to 10 rushing attack in the league. So it feels so weird that rushing seems to be so undervalued when only the best teams who are really good at it are the teams that are constantly winning and going to the playoffs. Just weird wrinkle there. But they are bringing back Travis, I never know how to say this guy's name. I'm just terrible with names. Junior for their running backs, Tank Bigsby as the backup. Now their wide receivers, again, you had Brian Thomas, you had Gabe Davis, you had Christian Kirk there, you lose Calvin Ridley, you have Evan Ingram as your tight end. Your O-line is ranked 23rd going into this season, and this is all by PFF, who grades O-lines, I think, pretty accurately over the past couple of years. So when they rate the O-lines, I tend to trust them, but rough offensive line. Can Trevor Lawrence have a bounce back season? I think he's going to have to, but this wide receiver group, night and day from what it was last year, because I feel like you have 3 legitimate guys we've seen have number 1 potential, but they've kind of always been behind a number 1 wide receiver. So Gabe Davis, I'm just talking about the ones they bring in. Gabe Davis, obviously the number 2 to Stephon Diggs, and then Brian Thomas, sorry, from LSU behind Malik Neighbors, who went earlier in this draft. But again, 2 stud wide receivers. They pair with Christian Kirk, who I think has the potential to be a stud wide receiver. We just kind of haven't seen it in his time in the league. But again, when it comes to this Jaguars team, whereas with the Houston Texans, I liked what I saw and I'm ramping them up to be better than they were last season. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I like all their moves. There's no reason why they shouldn't be better than last year. An obvious 9-8 team. Looking at Casino and I, we had I actually went under. Casino, I believe he was under as well, but then he changed his mind to go over at the last minute. But yeah, when you look at what their over under is set at, they are set at 8.5. So again, they've made improvements everywhere. Their defense, I picked under 8.5, so I think they're an 8-win team. I think I regret that because I do feel like this is a 9-10 win team. But again, will Trevor Lawrence continue to regress, or will he be who he was despite last year? Right? Was last year the outlier? Is that the new pattern? Right? So I feel like with this team, like the improvements they made on defense, like the pieces they added to the offense, but if Trevor Lawrence continues regressing, this is a 7-8 win team. If he's as good as he was previous to last year, this is a 10-11 win team. So I really do feel like this team specifically, this Jaguars team, rests on the shoulders of Trevor Lawrence, a guy who it's been questioned in the past, not by me, but by reporters and people who play with him, is a guy who's kind of like, yeah, I'm good at football. Football's cool. And that's kind of, again, fine. You're allowed to have that, but it feels weird to kind of put all your stock in a quarterback again. A quarterback who also got paid a bunch of money this offseason. The offensive signing that I forgot to mention on here, Mac Jones from the Patriots, is now the second string quarterback for this team. So does he push Trevor Lawrence? Is there actual quarterback competition? Probably not, because again, they just paid all this money to Trevor Lawrence, bringing in a guy who was a former first round pick, guy who started for 2-3 years for the Patriots. I don't think that stokes a fire under him. Maybe if they would have waited till after this season to sign him and then been like, oh, we're bringing in Mac Jones for competition, maybe that would have stoked the fire. But you can't bring in your competition and then give your starter a shitload of money and then be like, there's a quarterback competition, because even he's like, no, there isn't. You just gave me a truckload of money, right? So my concerns with this team are the regression of Trevor Lawrence. But if Trevor Lawrence can be what we've seen him be, or even better, this is, again, a true contender in this division. If not, I feel like they're going to be a lot like they were last year, where they won some games they were supposed to win, lost some games where you were like, how did you lose those games? But Jacksonville Jaguars, again, AFC South, when I was going through doing my research, looking at all these teams, very interesting division. A division I feel like I'm going to watch more closely this year than I have the last couple of years. Let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts, which I asked the question right there. Do they possibly have the biggest upside in the entire NFL? Let's talk about it right now. Oops. And so for the Colts, last year they went 9-8. They missed the playoffs. They have the PFF rated third best offensive line in the league. Now you know why I think they potentially have the biggest upside. Their total defense last year, 24th ranked, 16th against the pass, 24th against the rush. They were 15th in total offense, 20th for passing, 10th for rushing, and that was with their rookie starting quarterback Anthony Richardson going down, I believe 3 or 4 games into the season. Now, in those 3 or 4 games, he was not spectacular. He did look like a rookie quarterback, but you look at the coaching staff. They have Shane Steichen, who is in his second year, the offensive coordinator from the Eagles, who gave Hurts by far his best MVP caliber season that led him almost to a Super Bowl victory. You got Jim Bob Cooter, the person with the best name in all of football, as his second year's offensive coordinator, and Gus Bradley, a holdover from the previous Steichen coaching tree, in his third year as the defensive coordinator for this Colts team. Now, in the first round, they got Latua, the edge rusher from UCLA. They got Mitchell, the Texas wide receiver, in the second round. And then they got an offensive tackle in the third round from Pittsburgh. They also got a center, wide receiver, safety, cornerback, defensive tackle. Now, in the offseason, this was one of the more interesting ones. And by ones, I mean teams, when talking about what they did in the offseason. So they only really signed 2 people: a backup quarterback, Joe Flacco. Hopefully, if Richardson, goes down again, hopefully he doesn't, but I'm saying hopefully if that does happen, Flacco, they'll hoping will have some magic still left over from his magical run last year with the Browns. So they signed Flacco, they signed defensive tackle Davis, and then they re-signed Michael Pittman Jr., their linebacker Franklin, Moore, their cornerback, Blackman, their star safety, the defensive tackle Stewart, and their defensive end Lewis. So they basically signed 2 kind of backup depth guys and then re-signed a bunch of key pieces, mostly on their defense, and also Pittman as their star wide receiver. So when you look at this Colts team, you have to think. Now, with the Jaguars, it's like we saw who they were last year, and then it's like if they can kind of be that and use those key pieces to bump them up a little further, they'll be a great team. Last year, again, this Colts team had the same exact record as the Jaguars at 9-8 with a backup quarterback, and then they didn't add anybody. They just re-signed a bunch of people, drafted a good edge rusher in the first round, obviously added some depth, as I just said. And then really, if the Jaguars' season rests on the shoulders of Trevor Lawrence, it rests for the Colts on the shoulders of Anthony Richardson, who is a bigger question mark than Lawrence, because at least Lawrence, we've seen good, we've seen bad. Was last year an outlier? Is it a trend? Can he get back to what he was before last year? And then with the Colts, it's a total mystery. Obviously, as I said earlier in this discussion about the Colts, Richardson in I believe he was 4 games last year, didn't look spectacular. He didn't look bad, but again, 2 years under the Steichen, coaching tree, with his offense and the way I, as an Eagles fan, saw how he transformed that Eagles offense, and especially Jalen Hurts. When you look at Anthony Richardson, very similar kind of play style to Hurts, except I think Hurts is a little bit bigger and stockier. So that's why, quarterback sneak works with him, and running the ball, he kind of is much more elusive than he looks. I think Anthony Richardson in college and in the NFL, he showed great elusiveness like Hurts has. But again, as we saw as Eagles fans in the first couple years with Hurts, he would get hurt on just trying to use his athleticism to get out of hits, right? Instead of just going down, sliding, getting out of bounds, he would kind of try to take on people, and that led to him missing a couple games here and there. I don't remember exactly how Anthony Richardson got hurt, but again, you're playing behind an O-line that is the 3rd best graded offensive line in the entire league, right? You have Michael Pittman Jr., you have, I'm looking for my phone right now to look at this depth chart, but you have great pieces around you. So great pieces. This really does feel like the Colts think they can win with the pieces they have. And that's why they literally signed just everybody, right? They just re-signed everybody on their team. They're looking to build off of last year, insert Anthony Richardson. And again, Steichen, I think, is not only a great coordinator, but with the coaching job he did last year to get that team to 9-8, where they were 24th in the league total defense, 15 in the league in total offense, just a middle of the road kind of team with a backup quarterback, still 9-8. So I think that gives huge credence to him as a coach. But they also have Jonathan Taylor, who, again, last year, 10th in the league in rushing, just in total yards behind this amazing O line. Uh, so they're just trying to run it back. Now, as far as the over unders go, both Casino and I picked under, and I believe my reasoning for it was that this team just scares me in a sense of too many question marks. They're 8.5. I do think this is an 8-win team, but that's only based on I don't know what Anthony Richardson is. Again, the couple games he played last year didn't blow anybody away. Uh, and there's always the fear and concern that a rookie quarterback just never gets it, right? Like you see sparks of it in the preseason, like we have with multiple rookie quarterbacks in the first round of this year's preseason. You see it every year where it's just some sparks here and there. I mean, that was Justin Fields' whole thing, right? He was so special on certain plays and could just never put all the pieces together to be not even an elite quarterback, even a good quarterback. So that's why I have this team third and as a kind of fringe, maybe wild card team if they can get their pieces together. Because you look at the Jaguars, as we just did, you look at the Texans, and I feel like the upside for those teams are basically just do what you did last year a little bit better. And with the Colts, you could also say that because, again, this is a 9-8 team, but they just need to do a little bit better with a completely new quarterback that is just a giant question mark. So that's where I am concerned. Also, bringing their defensive coordinator back for a third year when they were 24th in total defense doesn't fill me with a ton of confidence. But again, I said it with the over unders. I'm going to say it now. The Colts have the biggest upset in the league, I do think, because if Anthony Richardson is good, who knows how good this team can be. But there's so many question marks that when it comes to like betting or picking the over under, I can't justify picking over. And I'm just they terrify me to put any kind of stock in if this is going to be a good or bad team. So I kind of think they're just going to be around what they were last year. 8-9, maybe at max 10-win team if Anthony Richardson clicks. And that's basically all I have to say about the Indianapolis Colts. I am, again, very excited to watch this team, as I am with the Texans and the Jaguars. Now let's move on to the Tennessee Titans, which the other ones were asking questions. This one, I think, is just a fact. The Titans are in a complete rebuild, right? So last year they were 6-11. They let go of their longtime favorite coach of the internet and of football in Mike Vrabel. They had the 30th, or they have the 30th ranked O line going into the season. So not great. They were tied with the Packers, I believe, for 17th in total defense last year, 18th against the pass, 13th against the rush. In offense, however, they were 28th in the league in total offense, 29th in the pass, 17th in the running. They got a new head coach in Brian Callahan, who was the offensive coordinator for the last 5 years with the Bengals. And then they got two new coordinators for the offense and the defense. For the offense, it is Nick Holtz. Now it's spelled Holz. No T in there, but it's pronounced Holtz. So why wouldn't you just throw a T in there between the L and the Z? But whatever. So it's Holes, but it's pronounced Holtz. So in 2023, I was also like, who are these guys? The offensive and the defensive coordinator. I remember them saying when this got announced that Callahan was coming over from the Bengals, where he was, the architect along with Burrow and that whole squad over there. Their coach, whose name I'm blanking on. Oh, that's going to bug me, but we'll get to them when we talk about the Bengals. But Holtz was the 2023 passing game coordinator for the Jags. He was the UNLV offensive coordinator for 1 year, which is crazy because we're recording this in Vegas. And then he also worked with the Raiders offense in different capacities for over 10 years. Denard Wilson, on the other hand, he was the DB's coach for the Ravens in 2023. He was also the defensive game coordinator and defensive back coach for the Eagles in that Super Bowl season. So a lot of Eagles talk in this AFC South discussion, but yeah, this Titans team in the first round, they took J.C. Latham from Alabama, the offensive tackle. They took Sweat, the defensive tackle from Texas, and then a linebacker in the fourth and a quarterback in the fifth. Now, with their offseason additions, they signed Calvin Ridley, the wide receiver formerly of the Falcons, spent 1 year with the Jaguars. They signed Tony Pollard, the running back that we saw on the Cowboys, who when he had to be the feature back, I don't think he stepped up to the plate. So it's weird that they essentially signed him as the Derrick Henry replacement, even though we have seen what happens when Pollard is the workhorse. And then they signed Cushenberry, the center from Denver. They also re-signed defensive tackle Joseph Day, wide receiver Westbrook, I'm not even going to pronounce that last name, Mason Rudolph, the former quarterback of the Steelers. Weird similarities to Will Levis, but I guess you want your quarterback to just be your backup quarterback to just be your starting quarterback, so you don't have to change the offense much. Then they sign Murray Jr., linebackers, a couple cornerbacks, a kicker, a long snapper. Nothing really. The big signings were Calvin Ridley and Cushenberry, and then Pollard, if you think that's a big signing. So, yeah, this Titans team, I'm excited to see what they are offensively because, again, their offense for so long was just give Derrick Henry the ball 30 times and then make Ryan Tannehill throw the ball 12 times, and then we'll just eke out wins with running the ball down somebody's throat and then, play good defense. And that's how they beat the Patriots in Tom Brady's last game in the playoffs and stuff like that. Remember, the Titans were the number one seed in the AFC, 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe. So this is a team that fell off rather quickly. And then it became one of those things where, especially under Vrabel, they never had a passing attack. They never had any sort of passing game. Their projected win total is 6.5 this year. I believe both Casito and I went under on that. Yeah, so both Casito and I went under. I mean, how could you not? It just what the only thing you can hope for this team is their new coaching hire is great. DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley can maybe rejuvenate what was one of the worst passing attacks in the league. Is Will Levis good? I don't think so, but maybe that's, again, just because he was under a defensive coach where he had no, he didn't have to throw it because, again, we're going to give the ball to Derrick Henry. So they're starting depth chart right here is Will Levis, Tony Pollard as their starting running back, which I do not like, but he can be paired with Tajee Spears, who I actually do like and thought had a pretty decent year last year. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd from the Bengals, so coming over with his offensive coordinator. New starting left tackle, J.C. Latham, Cushenberry starting center, and then you look at basically the same defense they had last year, including L'Jarius Sneed, which they got from the Chiefs. So, and then Jamal Adams as well from the Jets. So this team, again, if they can just figure out this offense without Derrick Henry, this, again, has the potential to be a good team. Do I think they will be? No, but with any team, we can say this. If the new coaching staff comes in and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, everything clicks now. All of a sudden they're like the Texans of last year, right? They're like the Lions, where you take all these misfit toys, put them together, and then it's like, oh, we just needed a coach and a change of philosophy, and now all of a sudden we've turned it around and we're contenders. In this division, I mean, Jaguars, Colts, Titans, and then Houston was only good for 1 year, right? So all these teams, who knows this year? It could just be all these teams are maybe like the AFC North, right? Where it's like everybody's kind of there, everybody's kind of around each other. Now, I have as many question marks about this team, probably more than I do the Colts. What are they going to be good at? Is Will Levis even a good quarterback? Can Tony Pollard be a workhorse back, or can Tajee Spears be a workhorse back? Are they just going to do a 1-2 punch? I don't know what this offense looks like. We saw the Bengals offense for 5 years just be led by a really great quarterback. I don't think Levis he might potentially with, Daniel Jones, with who I think is a bad quarterback, and Bryce Young, he might be one of the top 5 worst starting quarterbacks to start week 1, right? But again, maybe that was just because he was under a defensive coach. Who knows? But on that note, it is the end of the Only Sports Podcast. Again, I've been Will. Casino will be back here on Thursday. If you want to listen to the full show, you want to just see my beautiful face. And again, this is not, if you're watching the video, I am not recording in my room. This is my son's room because he has the only PC in the house. So that's what I record on because my laptop cannot handle it anymore. So if you want to see the full video where you can just see my very red face, go to YouTube. Full podcast will be up there Tuesday today by probably 4:00. It'll be available audio wise wherever you get your podcasts. And then every day I'll just be breaking up segments from this episode and putting it on our YouTube page at the Only Sports Podcast. So check it out, listen to it, watch the clips, however you want to. Follow me on social media. There's my handle. I talk about sports and movies on there. So like either of those, follow me there. This has been the Only Sports Podcast. I'm Will. That's usually where Casino goes over there. He'll be back on Thursday, and adios.